Hello, and welcome KBBI and our web audience to the Homer Chamber of Commerce candidate forum for Alaska House District 31. And I'd like to thank Land's End for the use of this room again for these forums and for video streaming services providing the live stream, and then, of course, for KBBI for broadcasting over the radio. I'd like everybody to join me in the pledge. If you could stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May be seated. Okay, so what we're going to do here tonight is going to have kind of a variety of things. We're going to have questions as usual at these events. The questions that we have been given to us by members of the Homer Chamber of Commerce membership and from the community at large. And we've selected some questions, and they'll be alternated, giving it to the candidates. They'll have 2 minutes to answer, followed by a 2-minute rebuttal, and followed by a 1-minute answer to the rebuttal on the questions. The candidates will also have 3 minutes to make an opening statement and 3 minutes to make a closing statement. All the questions will come from me, the moderator, and like I say, they were submitted by our chamber members in the community. As we go on and get through the questions, there's going to be a couple of other different ways of debating, and then we'll introduce those as they come about. So let's go ahead and get started. And Kelly Cooper, go ahead with your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and I would like to also thank the Chamber for hosting that this evening and Land's End for having us here. My name is Kelly Cooper, and I'm running for District 31 House Rep. I have been a volunteer in the Homer community since I arrived in 2002. I'm a mother, a widow, a grandmother to two, and I really believe in investing in our community. I've served on the South Peninsula Hospital Operating Board, the Homer Chamber of Commerce Board, and my favorite volunteer work was probably a volunteer coach for the Boys and Girls Club basketball team. I just really believe that we should be invested in our community that we live in. It's been my pleasure to serve the last 6 years on the Kenai Peninsula Borough Assembly, and I'm really going to miss it. I'm not going to miss those long drives home, though. As a matter of fact, the only moose I hit in the 6 years on the Assembly was an evening with Sarah Vance following me home. You know, we may have different views politically, but I do believe that we have many of the same core values. And in our community, we want great schools for our kids, our roads maintained in the winter, great troopers, as well as first responders that can respond to our earthquakes, our floods, our fires, and now COVID. So those are the same issues I've dealt with at the Borough Assembly level, and I look forward to our conversations this evening.
Okay, and now Sarah, your introduction.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for doing this. And it's amazing that we learned so many lessons through COVID that we can institute the technology and the resources from the people in the community to make this happen, to provide streaming as well as through the radio. So thank you for everyone who's helping provide that so that more people can access this. So I am Representative Sarah Vance, and I grew up here in Homer with have my husband Jeff, who are raising our 4 children right around the corner from where I grew up. And I have had the honor of being able to serve you in Juneau for these last 2 years, and I look forward to 2 more years. You elected me on a clear platform of repealing SB 91, the soft on crime bill, rejecting a state income tax, and restoring the permanent fund dividend. And I want to continue to do that by obeying the will of the people, following the law, and pursuing good governance. And I'm running on a platform this year of instituting a stronger constitutional spending cap, election integrity, and continuing the work to restore the permanent fund dividend, because obviously that work is not yet complete. So there's still a lot of work to be done. Those are not the only issues that are important to me. But those are some key priorities, as well as the work to continue removing the abandoned vehicles that have been plaguing our district, and bring awareness to human trafficking. It's something that has become near and dear to my heart. So thank you for the opportunity to be here and speak tonight.
Thank you very much. Let's just dive right into the first question. And this will go to you, Ms. Cooper. Your response followed by the 2-minute rebuttal and 1-minute response to the rebuttal. What do you see as, and by the way, on some of these questions, what I've done is that they're like categories and topics. I've combined them for the ones that seem to be a little bit long. So your question or questions are, what do you see as the single most important capital improvement project on the peninsula, and what do you see as the most important capital improvement for Homer?
Thank you for the question. I would say they are both the same. The marine trades industry in Homer has become critical. The Anchorage port has been struggling, and I see our port as a secondary for the Anchorage port, but I think it can also be very much of a primary. And so when the CARES Act funding came out, I was able to look through the Act and find an opportunity for funding for the study to get that project up and running, and I think that that is a critical capital project, and it would be serving the entire peninsula.
Yes, I have to agree that the Homer Deepwater Port is instrumental to our district and to this entire region, and prioritizing that in the capital budget and any way that we can get the ball moving on that is vital to our community and providing more opportunities for the marine trades, but also for the transport, as she mentioned, as a backup to the aging infrastructure at the Port of Alaska. You know, Anchorage has been working on that. The earthquake from 2 years ago was something that kind of opened everyone's eyes again to the importance of that. But Homer is an opportunity for a backstop to another opportunity to not rely on just the Port of Anchorage. So expanding that will provide more opportunities so that our boats don't have to continue to go to Seattle to get the repairs that they need, and increase opportunities with our marine trades that really is an economic driver in our community.
Ms. Cooper?
I don't think that I need to do a response to that because I think we're in perfect agreement on that topic. Thank you.
Well, it just so happens that marine trade, marine services will be discussed here in a little bit, so hopefully you'll have some more on that and we can go into it a little deeper. Okay, for you, Ms. Vance. Moving forward, what are you doing to support the tourist return to the peninsula, which is so vital to our community?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I think everything that we can do right now in regards to COVID funding and working with the congressional delegation, working with the municipalities, and utilizing the COVID funding that's being made available to get that directly to our small businesses to increase the access and tourism. I've been encouraging the administration to consider our tourism industry when they're working on their travel mandates. I had quite a few businesses reach out to me when the August travel mandate was instituted. They said it's too early for our industry. We're almost to the end. Why did they pick August 11th? And so we need to continue to remind the administration of the key dates that are important to be able to have an open door while still maintaining safe measures to keep the virus out of our borders.
I think that the tourism industry is critical to our community. Having one of those businesses, I lost 70% of my revenue over the summer. So I think it is critical that we are able to move those CARES Act funding through the economy, and at the same time, we as a community have a responsibility to manage our COVID numbers as best we can, and we do that by working cooperatively, as well as making sure that we're looking at our fishing industry, the charter industry, to manage that resource efficiently and appropriately, and continue to have all of those diverse groups working together.
Any response?
I'm in agreement as well. The travel industry is part of the three-legged stool that is so important to Alaska, and whatever we can do to work together and providing the stability and the assurity that Alaska is doing our part to keep everyone safe and open for business will help the next coming seasons to have a strong tourist season for the entire state.
Okay, thank you. And to you, Kelly, where do you stand on the Pebble mine, and how do you think it will affect the port and harbor if built? Do you feel that this has been a fair process in light of the recent release of the Pebble tapes?
I've had really strong feelings on Pebble Mine for a very long time. As a matter of fact, when I was chair of the chamber board, we were asked to have them come and speak to us, and I stood up at that time and said that we had a responsibility to look out for our state of Alaska, for the entire country. So I do not believe that the process has been appropriate. When we have the environmental impact study and the developers are given the opportunity to scale that down to 10% of the size, so it can be forced to fit through that study. There should also be another catch there, an economic approach that determines whether their scaling that down makes sense economically, because there's not an investor in the world that would support a project that's only going to be developed at 10%. So I think we need stronger support there. I think it's critical that we hold development to high standards. The fish in the Bristol Bay area are a big resource for us. They're a renewable resource, and it's not a risk I'm willing to take, and I am not comfortable with the mine in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, Ms. Vance?
Thank you for that. It's definitely a question of the hour. And I am pro-resource development, but I'm very much pro-fishery. And I don't want to trade one resource for another. And I believe that that's what the public process, the permitting process is designed to do, is to give equal opportunity so that when an industry, a project wants to be evaluated, it can go through that process with as little political influence as possible. Obviously, politics are involved, but the process is designed to minimize that, and I think that we need to continue to rely on the science and data to tell us if it's possible. Obviously, in light of the Pebble tapes, it is shown that the particular people in Pebble were inflating the relationships with our elected officials and showing that they had very different plans that they were conveying to the public. And that, to me, is unacceptable. We have a high standard here in Alaska that we need to continue to have for every industry, including mining. And I think that we need to look at that for every project going forward. If they can meet the requirements, then they can go to the next level. If they cannot, and if they've broken the public trust, then they've lost their opportunity to be able to invest here in Alaska. And that's something that I take very, very seriously, that I feel that they've abused that privilege at this point.
Your response?
I would like to follow up. So are you then saying that you do not support the Pebble Mine?
This is not a matter of whether I support or oppose them. My opinion has little influence on whether they make it through the permitting process or not. That is up to the people doing the permitting, relying on the science. And so that project itself is still having to prove whether or not they're worthy, and that is not my decision. That is relying on the scientists who allow the permitting as well.
Your response?
I would just say that the information that we have gathered since this has all come out has made it pretty clear to me that we should be able to take a position on Pebble. And whether, it's come to my attention that the new CEO has donated to my opponent's campaign in 2018. So I think it's important that we disclose that and we determine that we're able to take a stand and advocate for the appropriateness of that project moving forward.
Okay, thank you. This is for for you, Sarah. The question is about the binding caucus within our state legislature. No other state has a binding caucus in the legislature, and in fact, some have laws against the concept. Alaska's type of binding caucus controls the whole body with built-in commitment that says every member must vote for the capital and operating budget. They must also vote with leadership on every single technical process motion. The legislatures joining the caucus get the benefits of the powerful committee positions and extra staff. As our District 31 representative, what is your position on the binding caucus, and would you join it?
My position on the binding caucus is that my vote is not for sale. I oppose the binding caucus because I want every legislator to have a seat at the table, because every voice across Alaska is important and should be utilized to move us forward. We can't solve the problems if we're being ruled by a few. And I believe that caucus itself is just an avenue of a group of people that agree on certain priorities, and that is acceptable. But a binding caucus that requires me to give a yes vote before I've even seen a budget is unacceptable to the public trust.
Ms. Cooper.
Thank you for that. And regarding the binding caucus, I know that when you're in the minority, they do not have binding caucuses. As a majority, if you are successful in the campaign and you become one of the majority, the person that you have stated that would be your choice for Speaker of the House, Representative Pruitt, has said on the Michael Duke show that he thought there was value in the binding caucus. So how do you reconcile your proposed Speaker of the House saying that a binding caucus would be a good way to go, and would that change your mind on whether you caucus with them or not?
So there has been no decision made on who the next Speaker of the House would be, inside or outside of the caucus. So whether that is Representative Pruitt or not has no influence on whether I would join the binding caucus. This is something that I entered into the legislature as a mindset because I, again, value every voice. If that is the option of whether or not I would be in the majority, is if I had to join a binding caucus, I would choose to be without, because I believe that my voice can still be highly effective for our district.
Okay, thank you. This next question is for Kelly Cooper. We have heard a lot about PFD reform. Is that necessary, and what does it look like? Do you believe the PFD should be used for the state's general budget? And then also tied into this question, I tied another one in. It says, do you support a constitutional amendment to guarantee inflation proofing of the PFD and using the surplus earnings as 50% for dividends and 50% for public safety, schools, and roads?
So that certainly is the topic of the last few years, and I know it's really hard for our residents with the changes that have been made with having two different statutes on the books. And I would certainly always protect our permanent fund. Regarding the permanent fund dividend, we have a $2 billion deficit, and I acknowledge that the legislature has overspent, and we have got to get a handle on that. So I would support a constitutional amendment if that was a broad consensus from our voters saying that that's what they want us to do. With the way the formula is being applied now, with the percentage of market value and the draw being at the 5%, I wouldn't want to see us pull more than that, because I don't believe that that is sustainable otherwise. And we have a responsibility when we talk about the permanent fund. It's for future generations as well. And so we are at a point in the legislature where we are going to have to make that our first action at the legislative level, is to address the permanent fund dividend formula and how we do that going forward, as well as how much of that would be spent for state government.
Ms. Vance?
So do you believe that we should keep the traditional formula and pay according to the law?
Well, I think that that is the issue that we're dealing with right now. We've had lawsuits, and the courts have decided. we had the bottom fallout of oil, and we have this deficit. So when we talk about according to law, there are two statutes, and I think that there are very many different opinions on which statute we should be following, and I would like to protect the permanent fund for the future. As far as the formula that we should be using, we have to have the legislature get to work immediately and address that once and for all.
And go ahead, Ms. Vance, we'll do another little back and forth, and this is a very important subject, so.
So what I'm hearing is that you're saying, no, you don't believe that we should keep the traditional formula and that you would use it to fund government services first in order to balance the budget. Is that accurate?
No, that's not accurate. What I'm saying is that there are the legislative bodies that have been in place have been, depending on which group you speak to, have been using one formula. The traditional formula was changed several years ago when oil prices fell, and there is now another statute that talks about the percentage market value. And so I think that we have this ball that we keep tossing around, and we have to have the legislature be willing to act on that and determine which formula and how they will apply it. And I have not said that we should be paying the permanent fund out of government, or pay the government first before the permanent fund. I think that we have had a couple of sessions where we haven't been able to get there, and that has taken so much time away from us getting the work done of the people. And that's why I advocate for us sitting down and having that group come to a decision once and for all on how we're going to do that. And I would love to have the residents of the state of Alaska participate in that conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, do you have something to add?
May I clear up?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to. I just want to say that the traditional formula has not been changed. It is still the same in statute as it was from 1986. There is an additional statute that instituted the POMV model, which is the percent of market value that limits the draw on the earnings reserve account. They are not in conflict with one another. It is still possible to use the traditional formula inside of the percent of market value at this time. But currently, the legislature has chose to ignore one statute and use another. Any other formula that you are speaking of may be what my predecessor instituted in using 70% to fund government and 30% to the people. But that is not a formula. That is an ad hoc decision by the legislature to fund government services first, and whatever is left over is the permanent fund dividend. But I wanted to clear that up, that there has not been a change in statute, because people get there's been a lot of back and forth confusion on this, and I encourage people to go to the alaskaleg.gov website. The Finance has created a pamphlet concerning the permanent fund dividend, and they can see the statutes right there for themselves.
Thank you. And Ms. Cooper, you led off with this question, so you get the final response.
I'm good.
Okay, good. Well, you can tell we're in Homer because now I'm going to get into the question on marine services, okay? This is a little bit of a long question, and I've also got input from other people, so I want to just put it out there, and this will go to you first, to Sarah Vance. Marine services are a big economic driver for the Kenai Peninsula. As you know, Homer offers some of the best port facilities in the state, yet much of the work for larger vessels is done in other communities due to our limited abilities to work with larger ships. The private sector, like Northern Enterprises, is moving forward with private funding to expand marine services in Homer. However, the Homer Large Vessel Expansion Plan is waiting for the state to provide its share of funding for the final report, which is necessary for that plan to move forward. How will you, as state representative, get the state to provide the funding so the final report can be completed and move this project along? And then another comment I got on this one is, can you explain how you would accurately assess and promote marine trade sector of our economy, including workforce development and industry marketing? So from what I'm getting from people is a lot of it, this is important, as they want to see some specifics on how this is going to be done without it just going for long periods of time without any progress. So this is to you first, Sarah Vance.
Thank you for that. I'm just going to reach out and say that this is probably something that that Kelly and I probably agree on. This is so vital to our community, and the large vessel haul out is something that Northern Enterprises Boatyard has taken upon. They took that big gulp, right? And I know that there's other businesses in town who have partnered with them to make it happen. I want to thank Rachel Lord for working on them getting their grant, and I was able to sign a letter to help move that along. And I've been working with them to be able to make that happen. Because of COVID, it slowed down some of the things with that. So it is very important as far as the state funding for our large vessel port. That is something that has been a priority in the capital budget. And right now it is still at the top of my list. And the funding that we're looking for from the state is about $250,000 per year over the next 3 years to match what the city of Homer has provided. And I just want to say a big thank you to the city of Homer for having that match. That's very significant that they've been able to do that. So that's continuing. That is a large priority of mine as we move forward, because it's an economic driver and we can see a definite return on investment. That's a priority of mine in the budget. And as far as continuing to expand the marine trades, I have been to the Seattle Fish Expo, and that is something that I think that the more we do to continue to promote Homer and the marine trades, the better. KPC partnerships, working with more partnerships with them to get education and training up the next generation is another thing that our local marine trades industries have been doing that is just so beautiful. I tell everyone around the state the great things that they're doing down here as a model.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper.
Thank you very much. So the capital project for that at the state level and those matches are critical, and I know that they went to the state and asked them to asked all of our representatives to put that at the top of their capital request. But where we're at now is the study that needs to be done by the Corps of Engineers, and that's the grant that I spoke of that I found through the CARES Act funding, and it is now down at the regional office for SBA. I work really closely with our Economic Development District. We have a relationship with them at the borough, and I would just ask that our representative continue to push for that grant project to be moved along. I've been a member of Homer Marine Trades for quite a few years, and I'm grateful for all the work that they do, and we really do have to make that a #1 priority for the capital request. So when that Corps of Engineers study is able to be funded, we can move forward.
Ms. Vance.
I agree. The more we can do, we've probably both spoken with Senator Stevens on this, because the capital budget does come out of the Senate, and have mentioned that aside from the public safety for equipment for our firefighters, that is life and death, that this project is high priority, and we need to work on it as soon as possible, because the longer we wait, the more expensive it gets. So I'm happy that this is something that we clearly agree on, and will be a priority no matter what.
Thank you very much. This is for Kelly Cooper. Alaska is facing a significant challenge in balancing our state budget. Are you in favor of instituting a seasonal or regular state income tax? Are you in favor of imposing a statewide sales tax?
No, I am not. I think that we have had a really rough couple of years in our economy with the fires last year and now with COVID. And I think that the way we start looking at balancing our budget and looking at our deficit as well as revenue, we look at the revenue that we currently have on the books. And so that includes, our we had a conversation earlier this morning, and Representative Vance asked me to talk specifically about items in the budget. So we have our mining taxes. They haven't been touched in 40 years, And that's another reason that I oppose Pebble, because we continue to offer our resources without getting the maximum benefit to our residents, and I have an issue with that. I also think that when we look at revenue for the state of Alaska, we have to manage our renewable resource of fishing. So for every 1 cent per pound that we can increase in our price for salmon, that puts another $1 million in the coffers. So that adds up really, really quick when we manage that resource better, and we get a larger size and a better return on that. We've got some other items in the budget that we could do better on. I'll save that for another time. Thank you.
Ms. Vance.
So the question was about a statewide tax. So you're opposed to a statewide tax, but you're willing to tax a specific industry. Is that accurate?
Well, those industries are already taxed, and I think that as a business owner, no one likes to pay taxes. I have to pay my taxes. So I think that we have to, as our Constitution says, for our resources, we are supposed to get the maximum benefit for our residents. And we have industries that are not paying what they should be, and I think that we all have a responsibility to pay our share. I do not support a sales tax or income tax at this time. The only way I would look at that is if a broad consensus was reached by the residents of Alaska, but I think we can do better with the current revenue we have in the books.
Go ahead, you can respond.
Well, I think specifically the fishing industry, the commercial fishermen are taxed, have paid 12 different taxes at this time. And I think with the current price of fish, that's about half of what it has been in the past. I think it would be detrimental to increase a tax on them at this time. And I myself am fundamentally opposed to taxing the people in a broad-based way right now when we are struggling with our economy. But there have been a lot of polling done that says that people would be receptive to a statewide sales tax. I do not want to institute that at this time, but if that's something that the people want, we need to have that conversation, because I think focusing on certain industries should be part of the conversation, but specifically the commercial fishing industry is overburdened with taxes right now.
I need to clear something up, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
I was not supporting a tax to our commercial fishing. What I said was to get better revenue. So the taxes that are already in place, the fishing industry, for when they get a better return, a better price on their fish, we have more money that comes in the coffers. I am not proposing that we change that at all. That was not what I intended to say, and I'm sorry that was misunderstood.
Well, I apologize for the misunderstanding, Kelly.
Okay, tied into this, I just saw that I could have included in the other side of the equation is reducing government costs. So how does that play in to what we've just been talking about? And you can start, Ms. Cooper.
Thank you very much for that. So there are several ways that we can reduce government costs. We have the current administration has created lots of special assistants. They have created deputy commissioners that we've never had before, one such being the Deputy Commissioner of Education. We have to make sure when we are doing our legislative duties that we are not putting ourselves up for lawsuits, because we've spent a crazy amount of money on litigation and paying on lawsuits. So those are some areas. Some of the other areas where we can reduce cost to government is looking at how we can deliver those services better. So with healthcare and social services, one of the things the pandemic has showed us is that we can do telemedicine much better. And a big cost of our healthcare costs are the areas that are not on the road system, and trying to deliver those services that way. We have found that being able to deliver telehealth will reduce the cost of some of those areas, as well as it actually serves some of our seniors in a better way. So when we look at Medicaid, that's one area where we can reduce costs, the telehealth. And education, we have the same thing where we could deliver telehealth for some of our services, and that will reduce those costs as opposed to the transportation on those remote areas.
Okay, a response from Ms. Vance, and that'll tie up this question or wrap it up.
You know, I think those are great starts. There's so many areas that we need to do do business better as a state, and I know that the administration has been working on many of those. And the Commissioner of Fish and Game removed one of the deputy commissioners that they had and said, hey, we want to keep the biologists with the boots on the ground because that's so much more effective right now. So they've been doing those, but those are small incremental changes. We have a $2.4 billion deficit that we're looking at. We are going to have to take much bigger bites. And so a couple of the things that we need to do is adjust the formulas and look at doing business differently. We've gotten very comfortable as a state with large budgets and a certain way of doing things. And I really want to congratulate all of the state of Alaska employees and the administration for changing the way they've been going about business during this pandemic. I should have looked, it was either 40 or 60% of our state employees are working from home right now and still providing services. We do need to get back to opening up so to provide easier access for the public to be able to meet their needs. I've been hearing some complaints about that. But we're still working that out and finding those cost efficiencies so that we don't have to maintain a lot of the big buildings.
Thank you. This one may be a little bit quicker, maybe not. This is for you. You'll start this one off for Sarah Vance. Would you support moving the legislative sessions to Anchorage or put it on the road system to reduce the cost of legislative travel?
Yes, I do believe that we should move the legislature to the road system. The people have voted, I believe, 3 times on this issue of moving either the legislature or the Capitol to the road system because they want to access our legislators. And I believe that that is important. It's vital to our state to be able to do that. And it would have an automatic price reduction on 40% of the legislators live in the Anchorage area alone. And so that would cut on a lot of the per diem cost. The problem that we have right now, a lot of people ask me, why hasn't that happened yet? And the current legislative building is smaller than the one that they had purchased a few years back, where we could have accommodated having the legislature there. So now we're at that place again that we would have to find another location. But yes, I do believe that we should still honor what the people have requested and find a way to be able to make that affordable and allow more access for the public.
Ms. Cooper.
You won't get any argument from me on that as well. I believe that our citizens should have access to our legislature. I think it's really important. I think it's not effective for those that can least afford it to be able to go and see their legislators during the session. I grew up in an area where I was 30 minutes from the state capitol, and I spent a lot of years spending time with the legislature. So I think that it's a great idea for it to be on the road system, and I think it makes it more transparent for us to be able to do our work, and I support that.
Any response, Ms. Vance?
I do. I find that a little surprising right now because you have kept the public from accessing the assembly when people were asking for the public to be allowed, and you publicly made the request last night that the people not be allowed to be at this debate. And I wonder if you were to make it to the legislature, would you allow the public to come to have access directly at the Capitol?
May I respond?
Please do.
Okay. As I said this morning on our other meeting, there are no kings in elected bodies. So I have, since I was president of the Assembly, I got to carry that, and that's what we do. But at any time, 5 votes could have opened that up to the public. The majority of the Assembly agreed with me that with the pandemic, the way the Assembly's building chambers are so small that it would not have been responsible to have those people in the building, and it's the same thing with this evening. I did make the request yesterday because I do support us doing our part in keeping the numbers down. So the access for the public during a pandemic as opposed to access for the legislators, the public to the legislators when it's not a pandemic are two very different things. And with the numbers the way they are now, I would not support us having large gatherings inside when we are putting all these people at risk.
Okay, Ms. Vance, you led this question off. You get to finish it.
I think that in light of everything, that we need to remember that public access to legislators and candidates is vital, and that people should be able to have the determination, should be able to determine how much exposure they are willing to risk. It is clear that people are still able to maintain a 6-foot distance, and if they want to wear a mask, that they could, but we should not be able to limit access when we are at such an important time in our nation's history.
Okay, thank you very much. The last question, and this will be for you, Kelly Cooper. Where do you stand on right to life, right to choose? Do you see a pathway where this issue could ever be reconciled?
Well, I am pro-choice. Our Constitution gives us a very clear right to privacy. I believe that government overreach is pretty obvious there when we want to put the government in the exam room with a woman and her doc. Do I want a perfect world where there's no need for abortions? Absolutely. But that is done through affordable access to birth control, education, reproductive health, and those decisions are highly personal and painful, and I do not support the government interfering with that way, and I do support the way our Constitution's written.
Ms. Vance.
Thank you. I think everyone's well aware that I'm very much pro-life. I believe that life begins at conception and should be respected and honored all the way until natural death. I think that the key question here is pathway to be reconciled. And that is something that I think gets neglected in this conversation, because many of the questions is what's going to happen to that child? What's going to happen to the mother? And that's something that we need to address with all the sensitivity and support that is warranted for women who are in a situation where they feel like abortion is their only option. The fact is, children are a gift. They're a blessing. And the times that women feel overwhelmed, that they cannot handle a pregnancy or caring for that child, that those women need to be supported, and they need to have the guidance to know that they're not alone, and that there's other women who have been there before them. And so when I say that I'm pro-life, I mean that with all of the part of life that goes with it. Life isn't easy, and it's challenging, but acting like there's ever a need to end the life of our own children is a lie that generations now have believed for a very, very long time. And so being pro-life is more than just about abortion. It's about being supportive in every step along the way. And I feel that has been greatly neglected, and we need to do it a lot better.
Go ahead, Ms. Cooper.
Thank you very much. When we talk about this issue that's very painful for many, I will always protect the victims of rape and incest. And I will continue to say that our Constitution protects our right to privacy, and that the government doesn't have, these are really painful decisions that people have to make. And I think the government doesn't have business in that provider's room when you're going through the most difficult time in your life. And I think that we reduce abortion by having access to reproductive health and birth control and education and a better community.
Okay, and part of the question was, is there a pathway to reconciliation on this? You can start.
I'm not sure what your question is.
It's just a very divisive issue. Is there ever a way that the sides are going to reconcile and be able to meet on this issue?
That's a really good question, and I don't know how we get there. I believe that the decisions that we have to make on our personal privacy and on our own bodies and our health care, and for these victims that have been at the hands of rape and incest, are decisions that should be made between a provider and a woman and her family, and the government isn't the one that should be making that decision.
Go ahead, Ms. Vance.
I would not want to look someone in the eye who was birthed out of rape or incest and tell them that their life is not valuable or it's less valuable than anyone else's. That's a very brave thing for a woman to be able to give birth to a child in those circumstances. I understand that. But however, it's still a human life. It is still very, very valuable. And that includes those with Down syndrome or any other disability. And we need to honor and value life and work to preserve that. It is not a privacy issue because it is a matter of someone's life. And the incredible thing about that is that we can now, with science, see that there are 4 generations that are affected when a child, a woman, a female, is in the womb of a mother. That's incredible to think about. And when we have the conversation about what we're going to do to support those mothers during that time and after the child is raised, make adoption a lot easier to access. We need to improve our foster care system. We need to do a lot more to be supporting families and keeping families together so that women aren't having to face this alone. We've done a very, very terrible job of that. And I'll be one of the first to admit that the Right to Life movement and conservatives have failed miserably in this area, that we haven't been supporting family unity and we haven't been supporting women who are in that troubled place. But I think that we're moving to a new era where we can continue to address these issues that many people on the other side of this issue have raised, because we shouldn't ignore them. We need to address the whole being of the woman, the child, and bringing in the father to provide responsibility and preserve that life.
Thank you. You get the final response, Ms. Cooper.
Thank you. I think that, again, the government doesn't have any business being in that provider's room. When about 30 years ago, I had a ectopic pregnancy, and had we not had the protection, I would have had to wait for the government to give me permission, or give my doctor permission, because my life was at risk, and they did surgery to terminate that ectopic pregnancy. So is that abortion, or is that saving my life? I do not believe the government has a business being in those decisions, and we are protected by our Constitution. So I will continue to support the way our framers wrote our Constitution.
Okay, thank you both for tackling this very difficult issue.
Tom?
So that is the conclusion.
I just want to take a moment and say thank you to Kelly for sharing that very, very personal story.
Thank you.
And it wasn't necessary, but you did, and I want to recognize that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. That was maybe a little bit of a reconciliation. So progress. This concludes the regular question and answer period. We're going to do some other things now. The next one is called Speaker's Corner. I'll explain that in a minute. And then after that is called Pick a Topic, and I'll explain that when we get to it. And then we're going to end off with a delve into the Ballot Measure 1 and Ballot Measure 2 discussion. So on Speaker's Corner, as a pilot, I've spent a lot of time in London. I used to go to Hyde Park, and I would like watching at Speaker's Corner. I don't even know if they do it anymore, but I would listen to the speakers there. It was really very interesting. So this is your chance. There's no response to it. Each of you pick something that you're passionate about, a topic you're passionate about, and you got 5 minutes to go ahead and sell everyone on your topic. So we're going to go start with you for Sarah Vance.
Thank you for that. This is a fun opportunity. I don't know if I'm going to use the 5 minutes, but you know, I was thinking, what is the one issue that I'm passionate about? And this was an easy ask. And it's reflecting more on what this is all about. And I wanted to ask the public, what do you believe? We often don't stop and think about that deeply. What is our core values, and what is the driver behind how we make decisions? And as a legislator, that is something that I have to constantly think about. You know, how am I going to make a decision on a topic that I don't know as much as I should about, or as much as I need to? We have a lot of bills that come before us, and we read them, and we have to go to others and rely on the expertise and ask questions. But what if I haven't talked it over with my district yet? You know, how do I know how to vote on this issue? And so I have a rubric. I have a certain set of questions that I ask before I make decisions. And it may not happen every time, but some of them are just ingrained into the way that I think. And the first measure is it constitutional? And that is something that we have our U.S. Constitution and our Alaska Constitution that the legislature doesn't always get it right. That things slip through the cracks, even though we have legislative council. But that's something that I ask myself, does it bring liberty? After that, is it just? There's another measure that I use. Is it just? Because sometimes we don't get to ask every question out there. And sometimes there is gray area. And is it just can help through those tough times? So the other questions that I ask is, does it provide liberty over social justice? Is it bring the rule of law versus the rule of man? Individual rights over collective rights? Capitalism over socialism? And does it preserve life versus terminating it? I even apply these questions to things like the fishery. Am I going to be providing more liberty to the people in every fishing industry and to the residents who just want to go and provide for their families? Or does it provide more restrictions? Is it going to be preserving life or terminating it? Is it going to be preserving the life of the fishery? Is it going to preserve the life of the fishery for the long run? So this line of questioning applies to many, many areas, and it's what I use so that whatever decision, I'm putting it to a test. And that I don't have to, stick my finger to the wind and see which way the wind's blowing, if it's a popular issue or not. Because sometimes the harder issues are not the right thing to do isn't always popular, but it's very, very necessary. And I am seeking good governance in whatever I do. This is what I'm passionate about, good governance. And I think that each one of us long for that. And I started to look at the word to govern. What does it mean? Because conservatives have traditionally been anti-government, but that's not right either. Because without government is anarchy. So the word govern, the word that came to my mind was the governor on a car. It's designed to be there so that it doesn't go too fast. Because if it goes too fast, it could spin out of control. The same thing with our government. Government is designed to work slowly so that it can respond instead of react. If it goes too fast, then things could spin out of control. But when we have things governed just right, then it works out for the benefit of the people, and we see liberty. We see the things that we long for. And so, we could talk about a lot of different issues, and you could wonder, how would she respond to that? What does she say? How would she make a decision in that area? And this should provide you with some security and stability with whatever the decision it is. I'm looking out for you, and I'm looking out for the future generations. I want to make sure that the decisions that we make today will remain true 50 years from now, because that's what we need. Alaska needs us to think about 50 years from now, not just putting out the fires of today. And this is something that when I look at these questions and I think about all of the issues that feels very overwhelming today, this provides stability for whatever faces us in the future. That if we ask these questions, what do we believe? And we think about it, that we'll find that good place again.
Thank you very much. Your turn to get on the soapbox in Speaker's Corner now, Ms. Cooper.
All right, thank you very much for that. So, you know, a funny thing about living in a community for very much time, and then as we age, I think about the things that were important to me when I was in my 30s as opposed to what they are now. And from the minute I came down Baycrest for the first time, I fell in love with this community. My family knows that I have always been one to believe in the power of volunteering and making a difference. So that's why coaching at the Boys and Girls Club was so much fun for me. And those kids are now in their mid-20s, late 20s, and we still have relationships. So our state, you know, it is big, but I still think of it as small because how interconnected we all are. I really believe that our business economy, and as we look at recovery going forward, is because of how we all interact with each other. And so when we talk about COVID and the pandemic and whether people agree or whether they don't, here's what I do know. I know that the kids in our community, they want to be at school. And I know that our businesses want to be open. But some of the things that we do, you know, I think our administration has done a pretty darn good job of providing the science and giving us those updates and leaving it up to the communities to make a decision on how they were going to find their way through this. So as a business owner, I spoke about this earlier. You know, I have one employee whose father-in-law died from COVID last week, and that's heartbreaking. I have an employee at one of my other businesses that has 4 kids in the school system that go to 4 different schools because of their ages. And when the schools went to remote, I had to adapt, so did she, and we've been able to make that work. One of my employees at the espresso stand, she's a single mom, and when we went to remote, she now has to try to provide schooling for her son and be able to work, and I was able to accommodate that. And that's something that I would like to see us do in our community, in our schools, and in the way we govern. We have to be able to try to be a little more accommodating of the issues that everyone's dealing with, because the decisions we make will affect others. And so, you know, the masking thing has become so political. And I always like to remind people, you know, on these masks, no, I do not believe that this is going to stop me from, protect me from getting it. What it does do is it reduces the chance of you getting it from me. And we also know that there are many that can pass that virus on to someone else without having any symptoms. So this is a really small inconvenience for me because every day I have to make payroll. I have to I have families that rely on me to keep their lights on. And so it's not a political issue, it's not a freedom issue, it's a matter of us being a community. And what I do know about this area and the entire borough, actually, because of my time on the assembly, is that we do care about each other, and we have these differences in opinion and in political beliefs, but our values are very similar, and we see that every time someone becomes ill or there's a fire or someone is struggling with an issue with their business, this community picks up and all of those political differences go away. So this is what I ask for us as we go into the winter, to show a little more grace to each other and to be able to help protect those that are more vulnerable. And the pat answer is not stay at home if you're vulnerable. The pat answer is how can we be mindful of others and keep our businesses open and start on this economic recovery again and get our kids in school, because they do need that. And I completely agree that our kids need to be in school. And I will do whatever I need to do with these small inconveniences to keep those numbers down. I know it's not going to stop it, but it's going to help, and I'm happy to do that.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed that. We're going to do a thing now. You might want to take a couple notes on this called pick one or pick a topic. I've got from questions left over that entered this next tier. I'm going to pose 4 topics with some questions, and you can pick one, and we'll just debate it like you've been doing. The first topic is, how have you supported seniors in our community? What is your commitment to further support them, and how will you ensure our seniors continue to be vital members of the community? And tied in with that, if the senior property tax exemption is not, are you in favor of the state continue to offer the current property tax exemption for seniors? Why and why not? That's one topic. The next one is October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. If elected, how will you address the issues within our community? And tied in with that is, what is your overall stance on crime and police funding? Number 3 is, are you in favor of the recent cuts to University of Alaska's education budget? And then also tied in with that, education takes up roughly 30% of the state budget, and the amount the state spends per student has increased by 42% in recent years, while enrollment in the schools in Alaska has essentially remained flat. What are your plans to control the rising cost of education in Alaska while also making sure our children are getting a quality education? So those are 3 topics anyway. So go ahead and starting with Kelly Cooper, you pick one.
Well, what happened to the 4th one? There might be one that's just waiting for me.
Yeah. Was it the crime one, maybe? That
No,
one
you
got
tied
rolled
that one
into
together.
That was, that was 3 that I had on here. Let me look and see if I had the other one, but, okay, you have it over here? Yeah, that's the one it did, is, I already did that one.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm good, sorry.
okay.
4 is my favorite number, so I just thought mine might be a magic
Okay.
topic there. So I will pick number 1 on how I have supported seniors. Several years ago, senior advocate Peter Zuyus approached me about a senior citizen advisory commission, and I worked with Wayne Ogle, who's also a Republican on the Assembly, to bring that task force to the body, and it did pass. We can work together. We can work across the aisle. Unfortunately, that was vetoed by our then mayor, and so that's not on there. But my record stands on how I've supported seniors, and we, this last summer in June, we had the Council on Aging Commissioner Nona Safra asked all of the elected officials on the peninsula to go see the senior centers to see what their needs were, and I was the only elected official that took that trip. And so I was pleased to be able to do that, and after making that trip, I knew there were needs that needed to be done, and so I was able to get the grants from the CARES Act funding raised for the senior centers for from $10,000 to $50,000 because they have additional costs associated with reopening. So I am really pleased with the work that I've done with seniors.
Okay, Ms. Vance.
Well, I think I can address that one as well, or did you prefer a different
No,
one?
just you can. We're going to just debate the question.
Oh, okay.
Okay, back like we've been doing. So go ahead, you
Okay.
respond, and then Kelly can have the final.
Yes, I support our seniors as well. They are a vital part of our community and make up, I think, about 30% here in our district, and want them to be able to stay here and be able to live next to their families. And you know, I don't want them to go. And I've had recently a senior that said, please keep our senior property tax exemption. Don't make it more expensive for us to live here. So I do support protecting our senior property tax exemption. There has been, you know, some confusion about last year's budget. That was the senior benefits program was a part of the original vetoes, but I was one who advocated to the governor to restore the senior benefits program, and he did. I was not pleased when I found out that seniors had not been notified by mail about that, and I directly called the Commissioner of Health and Social Services and asked why they had not updated the notifying the seniors by mail, since many of them rely on that for good communication. They said that they were not wanting to make the expense of mailing to 11,000 seniors. So I asked them if they could give me at least the list that was in my district so that I could notify them of the changes, that their benefits were being restored and paid retroactively, and they would not do that. So I sent a letter to the senior centers, and also was on the radio and saying, hey, help me get the word out to our seniors that their benefits have been restored and are being paid retroactively. It is not something that I take lightly, and believe that we should continue to work to provide vital services to them, but also help them be able to live here. They're vital to our community. They're part of our large sector of volunteers, and you know, my parents are seniors, and they're vital to my family and my children, and I want to make their life here honorable and make it easier for them to be able to stay here.
Go ahead, respond.
Thank you. So I appreciate that. And when we talk about our seniors, and you talk about changing the formulas in the Health and Social Services budget, what that equates to is cuts. So how do you reconcile the cuts that would have, if we do it by formula, to our seniors, because many of them are on Medicaid?
I believe that seniors, children, and those with disabilities should still be able to access Medicaid and be able to provide for them, because a lot of times they don't have other options. So I do believe that whatever we do, we need to be very specific in our changes to our Medicaid, to Health and Social Services, and because they can't be neglected. I was just last year, a dear friend's mother was at her end of life, and working with one of her providers, I found out a lot of the paperwork that the personal care providers have to go through to just be able to take care of them, and that even the time that they need on their personal moments is regulated by the minute, and there's more paperwork involved. If we can make that easier and reduce some of the cost of that as well as the medical equipment costs that the seniors need, we'll be able to make massive savings and still provide the service to them.
Okay, thank you. Now for Ms. Vance, go ahead, pick a topic. As we had three of them, we may be able to do all three anyway. So, but go ahead and pick your topic to start.
I guess we can go right down the line to number 2 with domestic violence and overall crime funding. That's kind of like a big one. Although they are kind of put together in a way. Now, I am for maintaining our funding to public safety because that is so vital. We have, our crime has gotten off the roof, here in Alaska, and we need to be able to maintain that. We funded more troopers in the budget, and we've added more here on the Peninsula. They adjusted their recruitment, and so we have more graduates out of our Trooper Academy, which is very exciting for Alaska because it was looking pretty slim for a while. So we've increased that. We still haven't been able to fill all those positions that are funded. I believe that we need to continue to do that to provide the safety to Alaskans. But as far as domestic violence, that's something that I take very seriously, and voted on passed legislation with our major crime bill as well as HB 14. We increased the ease of the protective orders, made that easier to get those renewed, which is often involved in domestic violence cases. We addressed marriage as a defense of rape. I was stunned to realize that Alaska still had that in domestic violence issues, that if someone was married, that there would be no help for them in the cases of rape or some type of sexual abuse like that. And that has been addressed in the crime bill, as well as increasing victims' rights. So we've increased victims' rights, where now the prosecutors have to confer with the victim on plea agreements, and they have to log it. They have to put that into the journal on whether or not the victim agrees with the plea agreement. So, and also notification when someone is being released out of jail. And this falls into our domestic violence in so many areas, and we need to be able to provide for them and just work together as a community to be able to stop domestic violence in so many ways.
Ms. Cooper.
Thank you very much for that. And I think domestic violence is a horrific thing that many people go through. But what I would ask Sarah is, when we talk about addressing domestic violence, you know, we can reduce that by things that we do in our community and those areas. But some of the other parts of domestic violence are behavioral health and substance misuse and those things. So how do we address the domestic violence issue and the reduction of crime without funding it?
I believe that to answer that directly is that we can continue to reach out to each other as a community and be there for each other. There's so many times that someone just needs someone to talk to, and someone needs encouraged not to go back to the substance abuse. And I think we underestimate the power of that support. You know, they do need funding, but I believe that there are times where government and programs aren't always the solution. It's being there for one another. My best friend has been through some very, very tough times, and it was me being there with her in a very real way and not judging her and encouraging her when those tough times came. And that's something that the AA groups, for instance, are able to do, is to be there for each other. And you know, that doesn't always take a large budget to accomplish when we're there for each other as a support group. And that's not always the cure, but that is one that is highly effective in being able to help people get there.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a response on that?
I just have a brief one. Because of the amount of volunteer work I've done in the community, I would disagree that the community is able to solve that. And all you have to do is go to the Haven House when the holidays start and see how overfull and underfunded they are. And the community does step in and help, but it's not enough. And we as a community should be there, but we also have to have programs and safe places and shelters and affordable housing and behavioral health for the ones that are committing the crimes to be able to reduce that. We as neighbors should be doing that, and I appreciate the work that you've done on that, but it's not enough. It's just not enough, and you can see that by our numbers. So I think that if we advocate for something to occur, we have to be able to fund it because it's not going to be taken care of at the community level solely.
Okay, thank you. I think we should now go on to our ballot measure 1 and 2 discussion. We have up here, by the way, the written versions of the PDF for ballot measure 1 and all 25 pages of ballot measure number 2. So we'll start off with ballot measure number 1, and I just wanted to go ahead and work this into the discussion. There's some specific question regarding ballot measure 1. It says, ballot measure 1 calls for Alaska's fair share by increasing taxes on oil production. Many view this as a job killer, as it may cause oil companies to abandon Alaska for extracting oil at lower costs in the lower 48. Texas Permian Basin extraction costs are around $30 a barrel. In Alaska, extraction costs are reported to be around $38 a barrel. What is your stance on this issue and why? So this ties into ballot measure 1, and I just wanted to also relay that the Chamber did a survey of our membership for the ballot measure 1 and 2, and it turned out that ballot measure 1, it was 64% yes and to 36% no. However, ballot measure 2 was tied right at exactly 50-50. So this is a chance to kind of see if we can move that number off one way or the other and see what we can do with 1. So we'll start with Kelly for ballot measure 1. Is you'll have 2 minutes and then follow your 2 minutes, and then we'll do a little back and forth. We've been able to do it in a nice manner, so let's keep that going. It's great.
Thank you for that. You know, ballot measure 1, that's a tough one, but I would like us to go back to when we had ACEs. Governor Palin was able to address the industry and the taxes, and the oil industry came to us and said, oh, no, we need to do better on this. So along came SB 21. And in the ads and the noise when that was being passed is, if this doesn't pass, we're going to kill jobs and you're going to hurt development and so, which is why the initiative process is really tough, because we get these 60-second blips. And it passed, and their taxes went down, and they still laid off a bunch of people within 30 days. I had a person from the oil industry call me today, an employee, and he was really grateful that we were having these discussions, because I agree with him. The oil jobs, the people that are here doing those jobs, their work is really important. We need those high-paying jobs, and I think they do a great job. But when we talk about when we started really having an issue with the deficit is right when SB 21 came along. So I'm really looking forward to Alaskans having the conversation. I do know that we can amend that initiative at the legislative level. There's been a bill at the legislature for years, and they can't even get a hearing. And so I understand why the initiative came forth. I would have preferred that it be done at the legislative level so we could have the experts in the room. That is such a complex topic. And I don't know that we get it done right through the initiative process, but I'm certainly looking forward to us getting through this.
2 minutes, Ms. Vance.
I'm a clear vote no on Proposition 1. I think there's a lot of issues with this. On the topic of being able to amend it, the legislature cannot amend any ballot measure for at least 2 years. And so that would have to, we would have to wait and then try and have another go at it on that next legislature. Some of the top reasons that I oppose it is that it increases taxes on the oil and gas industry 150 to 300%. And I think by a policy standard, increasing one industry that much is dangerous, because if we're willing to tax one industry that much, we're willing to tax another industry that much, and also possibly the people that much. And I think that we need to look at it as a policy perspective, not just on one specific industry. When ACES was put in, my understanding is that we made money when the price of the barrel of oil was high. With SB 21, it allowed us to make money even with the low price of a barrel of oil, and that helped us during these really lean times to still make something. I'm not claiming that our tax structure is perfect by any means, but this ballot proposition would affect the industry's ability to invest. It would take their future investment money for the long term, and that investment money is the jobs and that their contractors provide for the value of the economic turnover is very high on that. And so if we vote yes on this, we're voting to cut those jobs. And if they can't invest into the future, then we are telling them that we essentially don't want them here. And any future investor that's looking to Alaska, it's not sending a good message that we are open for business. And we need them. We need everyone at the table because our economy is struggling. So I am a vote no on Prop 1.
And your response, Ms. Cooper.
Sure. I would like us to do a little research on, there are some amendments that I have been told that we can do to that, but I don't have that in front of me. So I would encourage everyone to do the research on that and look at the propositions, because I think that there was a debate from both sides of the ballot initiative through ADN, and I think that we should do the research on that, because I do believe we can do some amendments. But when we talk about the job killer, it was the same story we got on SB 21. Oh, it's so quick. So just real quickly, I would like to say that the oil industry hasn't delivered because when SB 21 passed, we were supposed to be getting 1 million barrels a day, and they have yet to deliver on that promise if SB 21 passed. So everyone should do their homework.
Okay, we'll have some more time. This is important. It's a special topic, these two. So go ahead, Ms. Vance.
Thank you for that. One of the things to keep in mind of why they have not increased production on the barrel of oil is that we do not control the price of the barrel of oil, and the world has had a lot of oil, a lot of excess lately, and we make money when we are pumping oil down the pipeline. That's when the state of Alaska makes money, and there was just a time that there was no reason to be increasing output when there was no place for it to go, quite literally. The other thing about the cost of producing oil here in Alaska that often gets neglected is the transportation cost. That's really the bigger issue here of why it's more expensive in Alaska is just transportation, and that is a larger percentage of the cost when we compare ourselves to other places out of state like Texas. It isn't apples and apples, it's apples and oranges, and that needs to be considered. But the first blush of this, it was promised that it would give us $1 billion return, and now with a look at the price of oil, it's only going to be about $250 million, possibly. All of this is subjective still because things change, but if we're thinking that this is going to solve our budget woes, I don't believe that it is, and I think that it needs to go through the legislative process so that the public and the industry and the legislators can have a seat at the table to find out what the correct way is moving forward instead of passing it to see what's in it and then amend it, because there is a 2-year waiting period, and 2 years in affecting the oil industry in Alaska can have devastating effects.
Go ahead, Ms. Cooper.
Thank you very much. So will you make a commitment if you're reelected to get a hearing for those bills so we can address it?
I think they have to be proposed, or they have to be introduced, because all the beginning of the new legislature, people have to introduce new bills. I have not been able to take a look at those myself, but I think that a good bill should deserve a hearing. Absolutely.
Thank you for that. And I too think that we should look out for our industry. It's been 8 years, and we keep getting told that they have all of these expenses. The other part of Prop 1 is the transparency issue. Every time we try to make a decision at the legislative level, and we are trying to look at those costs for the oil industry, they say, oh, that's confidential. Oh, we're not going to show you. So in order for the legislature to make good decisions, one of the things I liked about ballot measure 1 is the transparency, so we have the information needed to be able to determine the costs and what it is done. And the ballot measure 1 is those 3 fields, and so we can no longer have a oil company utilizing all of the work that they're doing on these other fields to kind of chalk up their additional deductions. It just separates all of that, and those are those 3 legacy fields. And so there's a couple of things about the measure that I like. I think that the voters in Alaska will make that decision, but I'd certainly like to see, if it doesn't pass, to have the legislature be willing to take it up. I, again, would like to say I've been in business a long time, and I have additional costs for doing business here as opposed to in Anchorage, because I have to have all my stuff flown down or driven down, and so I do have additional costs. I don't like to pay taxes, but I have to pay taxes. So if it can't pass here, then let's look at it at the legislative level and make that commitment.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything further to add, Ms. Vance?
Well, I have a question for clarification. When you talk about transparency for the oil companies, are you talking about specifically about Hillcorp?
I'm talking about any time there are hearings at the legislative level, and we're trying to determine what their expenses are as they come to us and say that, we can't have these higher costs. they will say that that is confidential and that information. So it's not just their financial information. It's all of their information that they are protected and they don't have to share. They say that it's because it's proprietary and that they would give away proprietary information. I can certainly understand that, but at the legislative level, I think they should be able to get that.
Okay, let's move on to ballot measure 2. It's possible that maybe both of you are no on ballot measure 2, but I think what is going to be interesting is why, because that's why we're here, is to become educated and learn more. So we'll start with you, Sarah, on ballot measure 2.
Thank you for that. I am a vote no on ballot measure 2, so easy to remember. I'm voting no in November. And the ballot measure 2 is ranked choice voting. It's been referred to as a jungle primary, where you rank the people on the ballot in order of your priority. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15, however many people are on the ballot. And then there's a calculation made, and whoever gets the most marks in number 1 place move up. But the problem that I have with this ballot measure is that if you don't fill out the ballot correctly, your ballot can be discarded. If you put 2 marks for first choice, then it doesn't count. And so if you don't follow up with precisely the instructions, then your vote simply doesn't count. And I think that goes against our value that every vote matters. And everyone wants to ensure that when they go to the polls, that they vote for the person that they feel is going to be the best choice, and they put it in the ballot box, and they know that it really matters. But when you have a whole list of people and you have to rank them, for people, you have to put a mark next to someone that you have no confidence in representing you on any level, then that feels like it's being coerced. And I think that is breaking the public trust, and it's getting people to sign their name to something that they aren't comfortable with. So there's a lot of reasons that, besides just initial voter confusion, that there was, I think it is maybe the state of Maine that has a 17-page manual on how to fill out a ballot. We don't need to make voting more complicated. We need to make it simpler. And those are a couple of the reasons that I'm opposing ballot measure 2.
Ms. Cooper, go ahead.
Well, I too do not support ballot measure 2. It is really complex. The amount of pages for that initiative is just, it's hard for me to understand, and I'm kind of a policy wonk. I don't think that it's clear. I think it's confusing. The ranked choice, I don't support that as well. I think that we're at a time in our country where people have a lot of concerns about trust, and when they cast their ballot, they want it to be counted, and they want to know it's secure. So I don't support ballot measure 2. I think the ranked choice would be really difficult to have everyone understand, and I agree with Sarah on that, with the if you only want to support 1 or 2 candidates and you don't select them all, then suddenly your candidate can be thrown out and you don't even have a vote. It just doesn't move. So I don't support ballot measure 2 either.
Let me ask, why is there ballot measure 2? Why is this in front of us now?
Which one of us is that directed at?
Go ahead. It's back to you, and then you'll have a chance for response.
I could give a personal opinion. Alaskans for Better Elections is the one who's brought this forward, and it is largely funded by people outside who are groups that are trying to get this movement across the nation. You can go to their website and take a look at their first donors, and it is majority of it is funded by people outside. Unfortunately, with our easy ballot initiative process, a lot of people are using us as a petri dish, and I don't agree with that. I think Alaskans should determine Alaskans' election process. Another reason that I oppose this ballot measure is that it leads up to vote by mail. And the people of our district said that they clearly do not want that in the borough. I think that that probably follows directly into the state level as well. And it was in one of our committee hearings in House State Affairs that they gave a slideshow presentation and said that this was one of the avenues that they were doing to get to vote by mail, was this ranked choice voting. So, you know, I encourage people to take a look. They're saying that it eliminates dark money, but how is it that they are being funded by these outside sources that are clearly not Alaskans? They may be transparent about it, but it's very disingenuous that they're saying that it's more transparency when it's not something that the will of Alaskans were doing from a grassroots effort.
Same question, Ms. Cooper.
Well, I would agree. I think that the transparency is important, and this initiative is a perfect example of it not that transparency not being there. I would love to be able to go and pull up a list of every single person in those organizations for complete transparency. So that's one of the things that I do like about it. As far as the alliance before us, but please don't misunderstand, because I do not still support it. I do like the transparency part of it. I think that one of the reasons it's before us, I haven't spent a lot of time studying that, because this campaign and finishing up on the assembly has been very time consuming. But there is frustration that our two-party system isn't effective, and we have our politics driven by the party that has the most money. And I think that Alaska, being the size that it is, has been able to start to transition from that on their own. You know, on the Peninsula, we have 3 races with petition or independent candidates. So I think that we're trying to find our own way, and we have really active voters and people that are wanting to make changes that way. So I continue to not support that initiative at this time, but I think transparency is always good.
Thank you. I think we all learned a lot from that. I think now we're up to the point of closing comments. And so for you, Ms. Vance, you get 3 minutes for your closing statement.
Well, thank you, Tom. This has been a great debate forum, however we want to call it. It's been a good opportunity to have some conversation, and you know, I encourage the voters to continue to find where they need to be, because no matter how this shakes out, both of us care deeply about our community, and we want what's best for the long run. And I'm going to continue to vote for the will of the people and do what I was elected to do, and pursue good governance. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, you can follow me on my Facebook pages, Vote Sarah Vance, and reach out to me. I'm looking forward to just a fun time on election night. Obviously, we won't have all of the results, but you know, early voting is open. You can still request an absentee ballot, but I encourage you to vote Vance, because I'm fighting for your liberty, and I'm in this heart and soul.
Thank you. Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, and I agree. This has been a very great format, and I want to again thank the Chamber for having this for us, and KBBI for also broadcasting that. So this election is really important. I think that we are no longer civil to each other. I think we have a lot of division. I think that I have been able to show at the borough assembly level that I can work with all parties. I'm a problem solver, and when I work with people throughout the city or the borough or the state, and I pick up the phone and call, I never look to see what initial or letter is behind their name. And I think that we should start putting people before the party, and I really look forward to people getting out and voting, and early voting's open, absentee voting. There is voting on election day. Just give yourself a little more time. But I think that we need to have a person that's really familiar with the community and the business community. I'm a problem solver, and I know what keeps our residents up at night, because I'm living them through my businesses. And I would like for you to support me on my run on November 3rd, and please vote early. And we will not be having an event on election day. It's now election season, And I look forward to having, let's just make sure everyone shows up to vote. That's the most important thing. And thank you for this tonight.
Well, thank you both very much. We have two excellent candidates, and it was evidenced by some great exchanges here. And I think we all learned a lot. So I'd like to just thank you and thank all the people that listened and my the fellow board members and staff at the chamber that worked so hard to put this together. So just as a reminder, the election date is Tuesday, November 3rd, and like you were mentioning, early voting is at City Hall right now. So, and also, again, thanks to Land's End, who is, I think, a model of a good corporate citizen. And I'm not saying that because my wife works here, but they are, and KBBI, and then also for video streaming services. So I look forward to looking at the tape and for anything that I may have missed. So thank you all very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you.